2025. We have water problems for the next couple of years.
They have new wells are coming.
They're adding wells, but they got a boatload of them to add. And they got to expand the plant.
Yeah.
And that's late 2025.
So that water storage tank and tree line's gonna.
That's going to help. That comes later this year.
That's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, that comes later this year. That'll help.
Oh, it has to help is enough that people aren't complaining they can't take a shower and won't fill up their.
And the tank will get them back to kind of where they are today. We got to maintain.
You want to say part of this stuff?
Hmm?
You want to talk a bit?
I don't need to. If I need to explain something, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, it might be something with the access or something like that.
I looked at the add-ons that he showed me, and we don't have a problem. I went over with them. Can enlarge the site, and the emergency access on Pearl Street is fine. After the road's built. Yeah, that's fine.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is February 23rd, 2023, and this is case DCI 2021-00019. It's a rezoning from the MCH1 and Mhpd districts to Mhpd. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you will provide is the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. With respect to how things will go today, first we're going to hear from the applicant. Excuse me, they're going to present their request in the case, call any witnesses that they may have to support that request. Following that, we're going to hear from the county staff. They will review their recommendation in this case, which was a recommendation of approval with conditions and deviations. After that, we're going to open up the public comment period. So if there are any members of the public that want to speak, that would be the opportunity to do so. And there are forms by the door that you would fill out and just bring those forward so I can call you at that time. Once we've heard from everyone in the public, we'll come back to the applicant and the staff for closing comments and address any questions or comments that may have come up during public comment. So with that, we can get started with the applicant.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Hearing Examiner. My name is Fred Drovlik. I'm with RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture, a planner in the Fort Myers office downtown here. I'll introduce the rest of the team in a minute. You want me to take care of exhibits first?
Certainly, thank you.
Okay. I have 3 exhibits. 2 are the MCP, one's with an aerial, one's without.
Okay.
So they're blow up. And then a printout of the PowerPoint
PowerPoint, okay,
presentation.
thank you. So I will take applicants, exhibit 1 will be the PowerPoint. Thank you. You can give them to me in any order and I can take care of it. Thank you. And then 2 will be the master concept plan. And just to confirm, this is the same one that I have in the staff report, just larger?
It is. Sorry. Yes, it should be the one dated, I think, on the file and on the revision of 11/17.
Okay.
Is the date on it? Yeah.
And applicant exhibit 3 will be the master concept plan with the aerial overlay.
Yeah, I just thought that was helpful.
It is helpful, thank you. Is this in the PowerPoint as well by chance?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Just threw it in there this morning because I thought that was useful.
It is, thank you.
So I want to be asked to be accepted as an expert witness in land use and planning today. My resume's on file. I've been accepted in this venue before.
Yes, thank you.
I would like also to enter Jim Inc. into the record as an expert in land use planning and in civil engineering and stormwater issues as well. And he's been accepted in that light before.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, and Jim, of course, part of the team. He's been working on the site plan with me since the beginning. We've been working on this for, it's taken a little while, a couple years now to get all this thing together, but here we are. Environmental, there weren't a whole lot of issues, but David Key helped us with some environmental issues, although there wasn't a big role, which is why he isn't here today. The rezoning is for just over 51 acres, mobile home conservation district, MHC1, as you mentioned, to mobile home planned development. Well, it's zoned MHC1 and Mhpd now. we're moving it to one consolidated MHPD. So the goal is to combine the two existing zoning districts, codify all the previous zoning approvals into a single resolution, expand and establish a different access point to the accessory storage area associated with Oak Park Village, and allow for new well locations as depicted on the MCP, among a few other little details. So that's the outline of the zoning request. The location is at the end of Pearl Street. So you go from Palm Beach Boulevard, go north on Broadway into Alva, make a right and go east on Pearl Street, and at the end is the Oak Park Village, owned by Oak Park Village Cooperative. Been there, let's just round it up to say 1970. So a little over 50 years, been a mobile home park there. On the north side, they own both sides. There's a marina for Oak Park Village resident use on the south side, the mobile home units on the north. They also own, so that's the main parcel, and they also own two other parcels that are abutting that property to the west that will be a subject of discussion. One has the current outdoor storage area, which is the westernmost parcel, and then this one is undeveloped, just open space that they have. All right, that's the location on the north end of the Caloosahatchee. The site information, as I mentioned, the MHPD encompasses the two parcels to the west, so I refer them to the two western parcels most of the time. The MHC1 zone portion that's codified under 8636 is the part that's been there since 1970, and I'll run through the brief history of that. And I do want to say, if there's some parts here that I didn't go into great detail on, because the staff report is great. It covers everything. We agree with the staff report. There's a few questions or things that we just want to clarify, but for the most part, I can rely on the staff report for the exact information that we're going to present today. So site information, you have three total parcels divided into, original park into two undeveloped pieces, one with outdoor storage. And then we did have public meetings. I'll just mention that here. We had two public meetings. We're required to have one in Alva and one in North Olga. We held those two. Didn't have anybody else attend except for people from the board and the other Oak Park, maybe some Oak Park residents asking a question, but nobody in opposition. There was nothing of significance to bring up in the notes, and those meeting minutes are put into our report. Brief history. So in zoning resolution 7056, there were a couple special exception variances and other changes since then. One allowed the sewage disposal system in 2000. The major resolution was in 05, and a variance from AG2 to mobile home residential 2 and commercial C1 to the mobile home conservation district. I think that was supposed to be MHC1 there. But anyway, with a variance to allow for, and it had a variance to allow for 10-foot setback for parcel 2, which was the main parcel. There's some units that have been, for a long time, built within 10 feet of the perimeter boundary in the LDC. That's typically 15 feet around the perimeter. Then mobile home plan development portion was originally zoned in 07, and it was the western two parcels. And there was some thoughts at one point that those two parcels would be developed into single-family dwelling units. That's kind of almost an investment or a long-term strategy for them. And then that's when they added the open storage portion as well. Since then, the board and just the long-term development plans have changed. They don't want to they want to keep the outdoor storage, don't want the single-family units. We could have just rezoned or changed the MHPD that was existing, and this probably would have been a lot simpler. Derek, I know the staff has asked me, why did we go through all this effort? But what they really want to do is just set this up for the next 50 years. Have modern zoning codes, have everything that's been done in the past, all the special exceptions, variances, and different things. Have what's already built there be permitted to move forward in the future, and just put it on record under one MHPD and one boundary, and just get this right and get the zoning to be in a modern place where they can work with it long term. So yeah, the ADD that was the last part of the zoning history was amendment to allow phasing plan. That was for the plan development portion. There was requirements based on when you could build a little bit of recreation, when you had to put the road in, and that was what that ADD was for, but now that's all going away and simplifying this, hopefully. As I said, the zoning request, we know the zoning request, we're going to the Mhpd for the entire parcel. This combines all the properties under one common ownership as well. So all these are owned by the Oak Park Village Cooperative. So now it'll be unified Mhpd under this same ownership. So, and the most important part is that we're qualifying the existing park as an official lot of record under 8636. So the development plan for the western two parcels, one was to amend the MCP to remove the single family lot phasing plan, add private on-site recreational facilities and green space. So we added to the schedule uses the private on-site recreational facilities. Expand the outdoor storage area, and while we're doing that, modify the access points, at least in the long-term development plan, and allow for, they need to put some new wells and put some new wells on the north part of it. Future land use, urban community, and rural. The conservation part on the north end of the property is in the rural. The rest of it's in urban community. It's also in the mixed use overlay. Don't have too much more to say about that. I think we'll go through the comp plan consistency later. So let's take a walk around the site plan. So I divided these into two areas. One, area A, so we could show what the development area was for the existing park, and then area B, which was the western two parcels. Area B so includes most of the changes, I mean, because the changes that we're doing to area A is just rearranging or changing the conditions of the zoning, or codifying, collecting all those special exceptions and variances and existing conditions for area A. So no changes to the actual site, just changes to our resolution. The only real change in area A is that we formalized around the lot lines that is formal open space. So there's a deviation we'll talk about later that shows that we have, it's a deviation because residential areas are required to have 40% open space. We show formally that in this area, and these areas 26%, but obviously this is open and going to be undeveloped with just a little access way through it. So we have more open space than that, but we formalized the areas that we could outside of the existing lot lines and say that's going to remain as open space as it is today. So we figured while we're in here, and because it's a very popular feature for them, is to open or expand the outdoor storage area. There's still are limitations placed on as far as the number of cars and things you can park in there. But expand the open storage area, which then at that time they would have to bring up all the buffers and the fencing and everything to the conditions. Establish open space and areas throughout the and allowance for passive recreation on here. So that's why we add that passive recreation use. Maybe they'll put, I don't know, like a gazebos or, I mean, something like that, but just whatever that the residents can use as an amenity for their site to walk their dogs and do other recreational things. We didn't ask for deviations, even though in mixed use overlay and stuff, we probably could have had even some more freedoms of that, but we stuck with standard buffers as they were needed, mostly because in consideration of the abutting residences that aren't the most excited ever about us using that 18-foot easement for the outdoor storage area. So this was not even necessarily just a nice gesture, but it's just a correct thing to do there. 15-foot type C buffer, type D buffer along that piece of property, and required buffers because of the outdoor storage area on the western parcel. And they abut a bunch of residential houses as well, so that's just good neighbor stuff. The aerial is just for your reference. You can see then where the area A and area B are pretty clear there, all the existing developed areas. So that's just for your reference. The We'll walk through the deviations that are marked on there. So there was a reduction, historically, there was a reduction of clubhouse parking. I think it was from 50-some to 26, something like that. And it's withdrawn. They put it into a formal condition. So we don't need a deviation for it. They put it into a condition of the resolution, and we agree with that. The other 7, or the other 6, so there were total 7 deviation requests. There's going to be 6 that are recommended by staff for approval. We agree with the way they redid it. I think it was, yeah, it was condition 5 in attachment C. There was a form of deviation for the reduced fence height of the outdoor storage. It was supposed to be 8 feet. There was an approval for a 6-foot, but then enhanced landscape where it would be 5-foot hedgerow planted around there. And now it's actually to be a minimum of 5-foot hedgerow, but then the type C level of plantings around that as well. So that includes trees. So that was a previously approved deviation. Common open space reduction, that's the one I mentioned. Actual open space is more than the 26%, but we didn't have to, they were just having us formalize what we could formalize and then stating it in the deviation. It's more or less, it is what it is, because we aren't really redeveloping the western parcels that are undeveloped in the first place, but the Oak Park Village part, it was tough to grab the open space there when it's all subdivided and under individual ownership. Setback reduction for the main part, that was previously approved as well. That was the 10-foot I was talking about. So some of the units are set at 10-foot setbacks along the sides of so the perimeter of now the Mhpd, and that's typically 15 feet. But that was in a previously approved deviation. Setback, and then setback number 5 is setbacks for subdivision of lots in a mobile home park. There's a bunch that has to do with there, but mostly we couldn't go and survey every single lot and find out how many feet they were away from everything else. So that setback or that deviation is for the just recognition that now it's a lot of record under 8636. Establishment of setbacks for the new Mhpd. Again, there's a table in there that we had for that staff put in there that shows just codifying the existing development again, where we needed to call out specific deviations. And then street access for the outdoor storage. We will talk about that one. So the development services staff put together a condition based on what that new access will need to be built to, because code has changed since the original. They had us doing a type D, redoing the type D 18-foot easement, which the type D doesn't exist anymore. And long-term, they just understand they don't want to use that. And to build it to what we needed to build it to was either going to be very expensive, very difficult, or just not work within 18 feet because of drainage and other things and affecting those neighbors that are nearby. So to the credit of the Oak Park Village Board, they decided that long-term, when they expand the outdoor storage area, that it's wise to just go on their own property. Then they can build a driveway, less requirements, and we can meet code because we have room. So that's what that deviation and that condition is for, and we agree with those conditions. Yes. Got to check with the engineer one more time. Did a 48-hour letter. So this isn't an issue. There isn't an issue. There isn't a disagreement. I was looking through this. This is actually kind of a discussion, and with a suggestion from myself for Oak Park, is that there really isn't. So on the MCP, we say, let me go to, I put a slide in here just in case for this. So we say on the MCP, emergency access to open storage area through that existing 18-foot easement. That we did prove and put in the work to survey that it actually does reach the full property. There were some arguments about, well, they don't even have access to it, and the original survey didn't show it connecting to their piece of property. We went through and did all the title opinions research and had the surveyor find that. And I think in the entire packet somewhere there is the proof that there's legal access all the way to their property. So they could keep using it. And we wanted it for emergency use. We think it's wise if something happened in there and it was blocking this access, I don't know, fire in an RV, I don't know anything could happen, boats and cars stored there. It would just good to have another emergency access through there. But then if it just says this, does that happen immediately? When does it happen? And I didn't want them to go in for either for a development order or somebody to bring it up and they say, well, it says in the zoning it's emergency access to, emergency access only, but they're using it all the time. I just wanted some type of clarity as for their comfort and for everybody else's as to when that triggers. The suggestion was, there's a couple ways to go about it probably, but one of the suggestions was that at the time of certificate of compliance for the expansion of the outdoor storage, the 18-foot access easement is to be restricted to emergency purposes only. So that would be just when they really pull a DO and actually expand that outdoor storage area, then at that same time, in that development order would be required to have the new access point developed and certified for use then. And at that point, once that was certified, it would switch. So, and the staff can weigh in on what they think of that, but I just wanted some clarity so they didn't get into a mess if they went in for, when they went in for the development order or continued use of somehow. We just know how this stuff can get messy if it isn't clear. So I thought that wasn't clear, so we'll see. We believe these are the policies and goals. Again, staff report did a great job of outlining the consistency with the comp plan. We agree with their analysis and agree that we're consistent with the comp plan for these changes. The staff find request complies with the decision-making criteria. We agree that we comply with the LEED plan and we meet the code for the requested deviations. Since it's existing and we're actually reducing the potential future uses except for just the outdoor storage area, which will be buffered correctly, that we're compatible with the existing and planned uses in the area. Proposed uses mixes is appropriate as it's been there for quite a while and happily existing. Provides access to roadways, necessary urban services. I mean, of course, they're on well and they're on sewer, but that has to meet the code as well. And then they have access to fire and police and the roadway and correct access for those types of urban services. Transportation facility, if there would ever be additional transportation impacts, then they'll be addressed when there's a new development order. And not adversely affect environmentally critical sensitive areas and natural resources. The conservation easements and those kind of things have been set for a while and established on both, actually between all the three pieces of property. There's places set aside in the conservation easements. So we agree with the staff report, as I mentioned. Outside of the possible the additional condition for triggering the emergency use, we don't have any other things to bring up. We request or the request supports the goals, objectives, policies of Lee County and the comp plan, we believe, compatible with surrounding land uses, and we believe the zoning request implements the intention of the urban, community, and rural future land use categories. That's all I have for a presentation.
The only question I had, I think you might have said that there's going to be 2 additional wells, but there aren't additional units. So are they short now, and that's what's prompting the need for that?
Yeah, I mean, over time, they either, I don't know, I actually don't know if they're wearing out or if they just is low water pressure or whatever it is. But if we want that answer, I think we can get that on this little sidebar.
Just curiosity, just
Yeah.
because we're not increasing units, and there's always the push to not add additional wells if they're not necessary, but I assume there was some show of need at some point along the application process to show what was triggering that.
Yeah.
I can ask staff as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't dig into that deeply. So
Thank you. That was the only question that I had.
we can, but we could find out too from the board
Okay.
as to what the request's about. We'll ask on a little sidebar over here.
Okay, thank you.
There's always one question.
Thank you.
Still gotta show me. I don't know why they want it. Yeah. Sounds like such an easy for why you did.
Before we got started, I wanted to just talk about the amended attachment C I just provided you. The question that was brought up during the 48-hour letter was about the access points and how they would work through phasing, basically, you know, what's existing today versus what's existing in the future with the expansion area. Staff did provide some language change to condition 7, that's Oak Park Village access. And basically that's saying, you know, today the existing access point works. In the future, that will have to change to what's shown on the MCP, and that existing access point must become emergency only. I gave that to the applicant right before the hearing, Jim, but I think that's generally consistent with what they're looking for, and I wanted to be responsive to that so we didn't have to leave the record open for something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Additionally, the applicant earlier today brought up condition 6B, because there's a section about the outdoor accessory storage area may not be altered or increased. I just propose to strike that language so that there's not any type of confusion when it comes in for development order of what's existing today versus what's existing in the future.
And just for housekeeping,
Okay.
you provided me these, but I don't think I put them on the record. So the staff report would be staff exhibit 1, your PowerPoint would be staff exhibit 2, and then these revised conditions are staff exhibit 3.
Okay.
An applicant does have a copy of the revised
The
conditions?
conditions, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So, and I guess we can talk about it later, but since you've addressed it now, the issue then with the 18-foot easement, staff didn't object to anything. It's just a matter of making sure that the triggering language is correct, and everyone agrees it should be at the time of development order and not
Right, yeah.
prior. Okay.
Whatever is existing today should be able to continue on. It's all noted on the MCP today, just when they come in to actually create new development there or expand the development area, we want them to become consistent with the existing master concept plan.
Thank you.
So, I don't think there's anything else housekeeping related that we need to discuss, but I'll go through, you know, briefly. The applicant actually provided some really nice visual exhibits that kind of help explain, you know, the story here about what's happening. But generally speaking, they're looking to combine the project, expand the open storage area. That's really what from a summary, that's what they're looking to do. And the applicant did go through this, but, you know, there's kind of a tale of two different properties. You know, there's the MHC portion and there's the Mhpd portion. The MHC has been around for quite a while, been existing as a mobile home park for quite a while. It was actually designated as an 8636 property. It's further in the slideshow, kind of out of place, but the interesting thing about 8636 is there's no extinguishing of an 8636 property. In fact, it vests density if you're out of density, and there's not anything that I've been able to find that would say this is how you supersede it. So the master concept plan that we recommended just defer to the 8636 area specifically, since that's not changing. And just that way, that process, if there was anything that needed to be amended in that area, it would be consistent with the 8636 process. There's a whole process set up exactly for such a thing. But it did have a special exception for essential service facilities with a variance, and then there was kind of a two-step to actually get to MHC, as it started with a CT and C1 zoning, and then came down to the MHC zoning districts. The western portion went through the rezoning in 2007. The storage area that was approved as part of that was accessory to these residential units that were discussed by the applicant. The ADD 2014 was to allow for that storage area to show up before the residential area did, and that's kind of why those two steps happened. Is, as the applicant's already stated, this has been a long-term strategy. You know, set up the amenities, and maybe there's a potential for more residents as they come in. That has changed. The plan has changed, and they're looking for more storage area to allow for more vehicles and boats and other things. And just so it's put on the record, this is where the northern boundary of the storage area is. This area was the part that was considered for residential, and that's Z07, just north of it. And so that area is now just becoming one storage area, as opposed to storage with residences up here. And then while we have the aerial up, I know it's a little bit out of order, but there is a deviation for reduced landscaping requirements. But specifically what they're trying to do is allow for whatever buffer requirement is here, or whatever required buffer is here, just to allow it to continue northward. And as we're finding now, I believe they are seeking a 6-foot fence as well. And the way that our code reads is you need to have engineered plans for anything above that. And after Hurricane Ian, we're not even able to find engineers that will certify fences because they all blew down in the storm. So it would need to be some structural concrete wall or something else. And that's probably not necessary for what they're trying to do. So staff was definitely open to the idea of providing the reduced landscape because it's consistent with what's today, and then with the fence, it's more practical for what they're trying to do. And then my understanding, or staff's understanding, is the access point will come from here and then connect to the storage area here, versus right now the access to storage is through here. There's a gate here. We've had significant interactions with the residents here about not wanting that to be the primary means of ingress and egress, specifically once this area becomes larger, so that to them, at least intuitively, to them thinks more traffic running through their houses. It's hard to tell, but there's not a lot of different distance here or here from the roadway. So anything that we can do to encourage less traffic there really enhances compatibility. And so when we were going through this process, we really wanted to get them to consider an alternative route. The applicant's already gone through at length on the master concept plan. I don't feel like there's much else to describe. Most of it's staying exactly the same. Really the only area that's changed is this area here. The property, and we won't belabor the point too much, but this is an interesting area because the Northeast Lee County area, the Alva community planning area are all intended to be very rural. The future land use category is urban community. What they're proposing doesn't intensify what was already there aside from the extra open storage. And staff finds that, because this is an existing condition, and even though it's not really in the spirit of the rural area, it is consistent with the future land use category. And the fact that they're not really making this a more urban product, staff finds that they're consistent with both 1.1.3 and the intent to preserve these areas. And quite honestly, the new development plan was still that much open space, that much recreation area. We definitely agree that they're doing the best they can with an existing mobile home park. The infrastructure and everything else isn't going to need to change. I wanted to talk briefly about the policy 5.1.5. We've kind of gone to it at this point pretty extensively, but the anything that's here is going to be adequately buffered, and then, like the applicant stated, this one I believe is an elective buffer that they're providing, but the benefit to this area is anything that is not meeting code currently or even meeting the requirements of the deviation will need to come into compliance with those when they come for a DO. So there will be improvements likely here and, like I said, extended up into the northern portion of the property. And then additionally, there's certainly an increased compatibility just by getting vehicles out from those tightly placed homes. We did already go through this, but just overall, we find that they're consistent with these goals. Water quality, anything to bring water quality up into better compliance with the state permitting, all that will be reanalyzed when they come in, and staff finds that they're going to meet those requirements as well. Just wanted to speak briefly to the existing boat slips that are there. There was a little bit of a discussion because the open storage area, when it's in connection with the marina, any boat that would be there would also be considered slip generation. We provided basically a quick write-up by our natural resources staff that finds that really this is an area that they're allowed to have boat storage, and there's not some limitation that we need to be worried about overall in terms of if there's additional boat slips there. And we didn't provide any cap for the number of boats that can be provided there, and we find them consistent with this goal as well. The deviations, the staff recommended continuing this variance as opposed to providing a new deviation. The deviation standards are just different, and so we didn't want to have to make them go through the rigmarole all over again, and there wasn't any reason, because it's in that 8636 area, to provide some type of PD regulation interior to that. And most of these other ones are kind of the same issue. Deviation 3, deviation 4, deviation 5, deviation 6 are really all trying to retrofit with that 8636 and allow for, to what exists today, to let it still meet code and not approve of Mhpd that is in violation of land development code. The reduced roadway cross-section for deviation 7, the applicant has brought that up. With them moving it onto their property, there are different standards what we can use for more rural areas, and although this isn't a rural area by future land use category, those reduced standards as opposed to providing a local roadway through a recreation space is not necessarily necessary. So we recommended approval for that as well. And so staff does recommend approval of this, finds they meet the decision-making criteria, and we're here with any questions that you may have.
I did not have any questions. Did applicant have any questions of the staff?
You want to clarify the well?
You're the expert
Thank you.
on that one.
Good afternoon.
For the record, Jim Inc., afternoon. Just to go back to clarifying the well access, there is a potential of a need for water from the well, but that's always determined by South Florida Water Management District water consumption use permit when they get that far.
Okay, so it's basically just a safety net to be sure that you're not
Correct.
having to come back through this process for that minor issue.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I should say, did anyone from the public wish to speak? We needed to open the public comment portion. At this point, I don't have any cards from anyone, but I wanted to definitely offer that opportunity if anybody wanted to place any comments on the record. No? Okay. So we'll come back to the applicant and the staff. I did not have any questions. It was a very extensive staff report. Thank you very much, because there was a lot of history on this, but I reviewed all of it. Every question that I wrote down got answered somewhere along the way, so I'm satisfied. It's very straightforward, and thank you. As you said, this is unusual that you're going through a process that wasn't thrust upon you to bring it into greater compliance, so thank you for that. You will receive a copy of the recommendation in this case, and the final hearing will be before the Board of County Commissioners, and you'll receive notice of that as well. So with that, thank you everyone for coming today. I appreciate your time. Please stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.